everyone. Welcome back to our spooky area of podcasting that we call Kings of King, who I don't think wrote much, if at all, about vampires. Pennywise takes the form of a vampire at one point, or a werewolf, I guess.
Werewolf in this one.
He also did Cycle of the Werewolf. I don't know if King touched vampires much.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, someone tell us in the comments.
I'm sure there is. There's definitely vampiric stuff.
Vampiric king.
But not classic vampires that I can think of.
He usually zhuzhes it up with it's like a demon, ancient demon god that absorbs energy. But it's still kind of a vampire. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Swaim. With me, as always, is my best bud.
Hi, I'm Abe Epperson. I'm the other king of King.
That was clipped out almost as if it was like your outgoing voicemail message. I love that. Could punch that out easy. Make a ringtone. Make a text thing.
Oh, baby. Yeah, then everyone will understand.
Hi. Every time you get a text. Hi, I'm Abe Epperson, the other host of Kings of King. Oh, I got to answer this.
Shit.
How you been, man?
Oh, man, it's been a while since we've seen each other. And Jesus.
I said it's been a while since like the small beans have heard an on camera, so to speak, catch up. Cause I'll on my part, I've been so busy with the day job that I have not done nearly as, and I feel it and I feel bad about it, nearly as much like streaming, which invites, the ability to interact with the beans and stuff. Or I haven't even really been able to hang out on the Gamefully Unemployed stream as much as I'd like. So I feel like we haven't clued anyone in or updated anyone on how things are going. How are you?
Dude, all the copy paste all the stuff you're usually supposed to say. At the heart of it, I'm pretty good, man. I'm really excited about the thing that we wrote. You did most of the heavy lifting, but I'm just excited to be back in the saddle. It encouraged me to write more myself alone, which was great. So I've been doing that a little bit. I've been, doing some family stuff and just all around just kind of trying to keep in touch with my roots. It's so hard to do. I know everyone's kind of having that problem, but just trying to keep all it's so easy to let all the fires simmer down to low because of this stuff. And I'm just I don't know, encouraged to not allow that to happen. So hopefully if you're a good friend of mine and I haven't reached out to you recently, I'm going to. So that's kind of my new drive. How about you? Yeah,
well, just to tantalize people a little bit, I think I can say, we worked on a spec pilot. We still are working on it. And I'll just say it's like Always Sunny meets Silicon Valley meets Blackadder, which is it's fun. It's a good mix. Meets MacGyver a little bit.
It's middle-aged medieval times MacGyver. I
think MacGyver was middle-aged MacGyver.
Yeah, he was middle-aged. I meant Middle Ages, but
Middle Ages MacGyver.
Yeah,
Middle Earth MacGyver. Gluing a fan belt to a hobbit and making a bomb.
That's how you make bombs.
That's the pilot. That's the show. I feel extra cut off just because I moved to San Francisco for the new day job at IGN and immediately went into quarantine. So I haven't seen my best friends. I definitely thought I would be free to visit LA and live that lifestyle where you're I live in the Bay. I pop down to LA pretty frequently but I haven't seen anyone. And in my new city, I just started making friends that I could theoretically see, but they don't want to see me. And I can't even I haven't done any San Francisco shit or gone anywhere. Because I used to visit the Bay all the time, as you well know, with you, and hit all the stuff. And now I live here and I constantly find myself forgetting, oh shit, Golden Gate Park is here. It's right there. Oh, yeah. I just don't go there because I can't.
You can't have access to it. Let me ask
that awesome place Abe and I went 10 odd years ago. I live there now, but it doesn't feel like it because I don't go to those places.
I know. And it's a wonderful city to just walk around. Let me ask you something. Do you ever still interested in stand-up?
Oh, very much so.
When quarantine settles down and comedy clubs open up, are you going to do like shows in San Francisco, you think?
I will if you will.
I'm not in San Francisco.
No. I mean, what if we challenged each other to do some open mics?
I don't want to. I've done like 3 open mics and I hate it.
Well, then why are you asking me?
Hey man, you're the front-facing part of this collaboration. Okay, I don't need to go in front of a microphone. Oh no, I'm in front of a microphone.
That's right.
We're fucked.
We're fucked. Yes,
I was
is
a
the
performer
answer.
for a little bit, but I don't know. I think it's a muscle you flex.
No, it's weird you asked that. I've been thinking about stand-up a lot lately. I do really want to do that when we're able. And right now, I've been, because that's like why I'm not streaming and shit, and you're on top of my Small Bean schedule. But work is crushingly busy right now because it's like the video game convention season. They are letting me do a block of programming for Gamescom, which is a big European video game convention that will have, like, it's modeled like a late night talk show. So my opening monologue will just be stand up. Like, I'm just going to write a tight 10.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, real stand up in a venue would be fun.
Yeah, I love your stuff over there. It always reminds me of, even though it's just because it's the same voice and the same pen, but it always reminds me of like Does Not Compute and stuff, where you just had a monologue where you could just play with words.
Yep, I just bought my new host suit.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's very Does Not Compute. The only caveat is it will be about the minutia of video games revealed at Gamescom. So it's not quite as broad as just like, hey, did you see this crazy thing on YouTube, or did you hear this in the news? It's very specific stand-up.
Yeah, but you got to give something to the epic gamers, Gotta give it to the gamers. Maybe not the movies.
Hey, it's genuine. We got one-upsmanship long before I joined IGN.
For sure.
We're gamers. We game.
We
have parties.
We have parties. We got 7-Up. We got Liquid.
But I miss you, dude. I'll be down in LA for the shoots, and we should find a way to see each other somehow.
Yeah. There's always a quarantine-safe way, even if it's just waving at each other from...
I thought we could
beach.
Go to the park and eat watermelon far from each other and yell. Yeah, something like that.
Scream a conversation. No one's going to be there. We'll just scare some dogs or something. I don't know.
That's right. So this has been your Small Beans update, just to clue you in on what's going on. Let's get back on the rails, huh? Feels like time.
Yeah, so Kings of King.
That's right. Back to Kings of King. I feel like a good chunk of Small Beans will be pleased we did that. Some chunk will be like, skip 30 seconds,
what the
skip
fuck
30
is
seconds,
this?
skip 30
Get to
seconds.
the shit that I'm talking about. So this is 1990s miniseries, not to be confused with the more modern equivalent of the movie and its sequel. This is the miniseries made for TV movie.
That's right. We're talking about It, which is hard to talk about without being confusing because it's such a short word that you hear so often. We're talking about It. Stephen King's It. In the Amazon store, to differentiate from the new movies, it's called Stephen King's It! ! Which is a terrible title.
Yeah. It's on Amazon and streaming, I believe, so you can watch it yourself. It's very 1990s and it's very TV, which was kind of before we jump into it, I forgot how different TV was 30 years ago.
Speak to that.
Well, from an age, TV was not bold back then. We had a golden age of television, so it held back actual terror, and does very lame. I would say
bold in horror. You mean?
Yeah,
I'm like Roots
the
was
jump
bold.
scares
I can think of bold stuff, but
the first 4 beats we get with Pennywise in this are jump scares that I wouldn't even call jump scares. It's mostly just clown is creepy and now he's got sharp teeth. It's just. It's basically kind of you forget what you're signing up for with 1990s TV, where they couldn't show blood. In fact, this one made waves because it showed blood.
It's all it does is show blood.
Yeah, there's coming out of sinks. There's skeletons grabbing from a pond, but it's
blood balloons.
At best, just off-putting for today's audiences, wouldn't you say?
I would say, look up, you fool. Look all around you. It may be transparent, but we've been trapped. Under the Dome.
Under the dome.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
Yeah, we're clearly under the dome on this. I think we should go on and do it. Yeah. I agree with you. And I have a take, and I don't know when to deploy it because
Not under the dome. Under the dome right now. We just want an elevator synopsis. I can do it quickly.
It will inevitably take over the whole thing. So yeah. Under the domus.
I'll take you there. I guess easy way. I mean, what are you, under a rock? Do I need to explain it to you? Like 6 adults like reconvene at their childhood town in order to thwart a demon clown from killing more kids. And it happens it's been happening for like 200 years in Derry, their town. And we see flashbacks of them as the kids are going up against the clown 27 years ago. And they pushed it back to being like dormant. And the 7 people are the loser club. And that's Bill, Eddie, I think I'm going to get it right, Ben, Mike,
Grumpy, Sneezy, and Dog.
Richie, Stan, and Beverly. Part 1 covers the story mainly in flashback, the kids fighting Pennywise. So people who have only seen the recent films, it's kind of paginated in the same way. Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 covers mainly the kids fighting Pennywise the first time, but it has it's along with backstories, and there's a like framing device in Part 1 that returns us to the present. Bill basically calls everyone and tells them, "Come back to Derry. It's back." Mike does. Apologize. Yeah, Bill's our main character inexplicably still.
Never miss a Mike.
But we end on the reveal that like Stan kills himself, or maybe that's the beginning of Part 2. Did you watch it on Amazon? Because they cut it up to 1 3-hour 7-minute film.
I watched it seam together as a film, as a 3-hour movie. Yeah, and I had never seen it before, which you haven't either, which we should flag.
Yeah, absolutely. Part 2 is the reunion of the Losers Gang and the destruction of it altogether. We continue the flashbacks to the youth as they like kind of reconnect with places in Derry, because now they're here as adults, which is kind of nice because it kind of gives this vibe of like returning to a place they haven't been for like 20 years. But it mainly takes place in the present, so we kind of have Part 1 past, Part 2 present, with a little bit of in between the two. And that's like,
I would argue though that this TV version is much more, which the book is, it tries to be more simultaneous. Like, it's constantly going, in the present, this happens, move the story beat 1 beat. Mm-hmm. But that reminds him of when this happened in the past, because their memories are also coming back because they've returned to Derry, because when you leave, you gain amnesia of Pennywise. That's one of his powers. So now that they're coming back, they're like constantly having
I didn't
flashbacks.
Know that.
Oh, there's a couple. It's explicated in the book, but they mention it a couple times.
I didn't. They do, obliquely. But I thought that was King saying like it was so traumatic that like that's what they did. They forgot.
Oh no, it's literally one of his alien powers. You can't remember that he fucked with you.
That makes more sense because I was very hesitant
and that's why
with
in
agreeing
Derry,
with that.
The cops don't investigate crimes and 100 kids can die and people just go, I guess that's just life. That's part of Pennywise's mind control over the town. So, yeah, reading the book, obviously, there's a little more context. But I just was saying that it's more simultaneous, whereas the new movies were really like, this one is about the kids, flash forward, this one's about the adults.
Very much so.
But yeah, continue.
Well, that's like it, I guess.
That's it.
I mean, like that. I want to kind of like any scenes that you want to like touch upon. I feel like we can do that during another confusing segue during it. But we're not there yet. We have
one of our eponymous segments.
Yeah, we have a segment called It where we talk scene work themes and symbolism, but that's not that right now. So I feel like unless you have anything to add to Under the Dome, we can hop over to Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, the dome's crashing down around us, revealing some spooky skeletons.
Something in the mist!
Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
Yeah, so Skeleton Crew is about the creative team. Any interesting behind the scenes trivia that we read about? This one doesn't have a terrible amount. Do you have anything? I have a few things, but do you got anything? Because I just talked.
I have almost nothing. I mean, the cast is full of people that I lit up where I was like, oh, that's interesting that it's them. Right. John Ritter is one of my favorite comedic actors of all time. Like John Ritter in Bad Santa is a fucking masterclass in comedy acting. But
you know what's crazy at this time? The biggest like pull was Harry Anderson, who's like a lesser.
I was gonna say then you got Harry
comedian.
Anderson. Well, he was big on.
He was big at the time.
Sitcom about a judge, and I forget what it's called. Night Court. Thank you. Which also had. No, I'm confusing
John
things.
Larroquette.
That's right, John Larroquette. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to think of John Larroquette and Harry Anderson. Harry Anderson was in a bunch of stuff. He also became like synonymous with Dave Barry. Like any Dave Barry thing that got adapted, it would be Harry Anderson. He has a very charming air. I like him. He's a throwback actor, though. He feels like he could only exist on 90s TV.
There's one performance that he like puts his like hand to his face, like, "Oh, brother," and it's like, "Oh, geez, this is really 90s."
We'll get into it, but when it tries to tell us what funny people are like and what comedians are like, Stephen King does not know what
he doesn't. I
don't really trust him around a joke.
Like I just didn't know what he was saying more than anything.
But
and Jonathan Brandis is in it.
I don't know who that is.
Shout out to my Sequest people.
Okay, who does he play? Who are we talking about?
He plays young Bill.
Young Bill. Okay,
he's the stutter kid
and he's on Sequest. Sequest. And then young Harry Anderson is Seth Green, which I did not expect at all.
Didn't expect that.
Hey,
I knew John Ritter because I'd seen some, images and such. Who plays Ben?
This is, man. Sometimes I wonder, because I aspire to one day actually break into Hollywood, and I still talk like I know I never will. I guess he'll never hear this, but I'm like we know Jamie Loftus, who's wonderful, and she writes for Robot Chicken, which is Seth Green's show. So it's a non-zero chance that this could get back to him. And he seems like a great, nice dude. But Seth Green has like never figured out how to act, right?
Hard disagree.
Really?
Disagree. Yeah.
Based on what performances?
I don't think he's a character actor in the way that a lot of working TV and film actors are.
You're thinking of Buffy, aren't you?
He's pretty good in Buffy, but no, actually what I'm thinking of, and shame on you, Party Monster.
Actually, he's good in Party Monster.
He's really good in Party Monster, so...
Well, then I guess I shouldn't be busting the balls of like a child actor, but he seemed really flat in this, and I held him to a high standard because it's Seth Green, but he's still just a kid. Well,
definitely in this, he doesn't
really stank up the podcast.
No, I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I think it's okay. Someone can hear that. I mean, that's...
Hey, people tell me I suck. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think we're saying he sucks. I think we're just saying, as a kid, you sucked.
Well, I find that there are very few child actors worth a damn, and none of them are in this movie. Like, none of the kids particularly impressed me.
It's so hard.
It is very hard, and you rarely see a child actor that blows you away, which is why, there is something special about a Daniel Radcliffe or a Dakota Fanning. They're like weirdly already have an adult skill set when they're children. It's unusual.
It's also hard to do like the 50s lines. Because we talked about this with Stand By Me, where he's still using that
Stand
vernacular.
By Me is going to come up, yeah.
Yeah, and like when you are not even related to that, and you're like 12 or like however the kids were, 12 to 14, and they're trying to say these things that just make no sense to them, it's not gonna.
And they're actual
work.
90s kids, so this is not their vernacular.
It always works better in Stevie's brain than a kid who's like, oh, and I want to say piss up a rope,
Yeah, hey, that's what buy my bag. But really all I wanted to say Skeleton Crew-wise was the rare occasion to actually bring it to the book because, okay, it's time to deploy it. My hot take about it is And I say this with another of my dearest friends, Griffin Rowell, like always talking this movie up my whole life because like, you haven't seen it still? Because as a kid, this was the scariest thing in the world to him and gave him nightmares, made him scared of clowns. I think it is non-negligibly responsible for the meme of scary clowns persisting as long as it has and being a thing all the way to 2020. It obviously has a huge cultural footprint, and a lot of it goes back to this TV special, but I think even more of it goes back to the book itself, because the book itself is frightening and feels dense and epic. It almost feels like the Lord of the Rings, but in modern times. Like they're on a quest to vanquish an evil that lives in a pit that they have to like descend into. It really feels epic and interwoven, and like, or The Wheel of Time, another, fabulous fantasy series where it's like, right. I know everything about each of these kids. They're alive. And it has really transgressive shit that I don't even know if it's okay. Like the kids all fuck in the sewer, there's for sure, the pedophilic orgy that's often and even obliquely referenced in this, where there's like a shadow scene in the sewers where it's the scene where they would fuck, but they don't. But they kind of reference that they did, but they don't because it's TV in the 90s. And my take is, ooh, this is one of the worst movies I ever saw. This movie is garbage. This is like, I didn't know we were in a Dreamcatcher situation. This movie blows chunks, dude. This movie sucks ass. I hate this movie. That's my take. And much like Dreamcatcher, I think we will find it very fascinating to unpack. But I wanted to say, as far as the behind the scenes goes, I'm going to call on Stephen King as my only notable crew member here and just say, it really is a good book, and I want to analyze why I think this is such a facile piece of shit.
Yeah, I want to expand on that. I want to bring up two other people. One is Lawrence Cohen, who is one of the scriptwriters on this, and he wrote Carrie, so he's already kind of been tested.
Kinged in. Yeah.
Yeah, and the also other writer is also the director, Tommy Lewallis, who only really directed movie like Fright Night 2. That was like his movie he did before this. And then everything else was TV direction. He did like Baywatch, Twilight Zone, Max Headroom. Like just looking at where he was before he made this was clearly designed to be just a TV thing. So I want that to be in people's head because I want to talk a lot about direction. And why I think it speaks to what you're saying of like when we take a story that's as interesting as I think it actually is.
It really is a good yarn. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of one of the better ones. And we can get into that later, why I think that. And why does this movie fail is a big question I want to ask to the group, I guess, but also to you mainly. And I think that there's a lot of skepticism that King had and he wrote about in as early as like 1983, where he's like, I don't think TV's ever going to work for my writing. And then when they made it, when he wrote it, it was like, I think 1986, he was like, nah, a television version of this book would be bullshit. So he thought it was going to be bullshit. I didn't actually find any quotes about what he thought about it after the fact,
after seeing it. Yeah.
But I think that means that he probably just didn't change his negative view on horror television.
I was going to say, he's the kind of guy who he loves movies. I think he's genuinely delighted that the world embraced his work and he gets to see his writing come to life on the screen. Right. He seems to love movies. And he's also polite. So if he didn't lavish praise on your thing, it's probably not his favorite Stephen King adaptation. Yeah. Like he's out here blurbing everyone related to him. And, 10% of new horror novels have a quote by Stephen King say like, give this guy a chance. I swear he's like the freshest new horror writer. Right. He's a big supporter of the medium and his fellow artists. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think he was right. It is bullshit. And he's probably too polite to go, it's bullshit. Polite. Because it worked on, this movie is beloved. And I know a lot of people our age who, because they saw it as kids, they were like, it is the scariest thing. to me, the scariest one. It's the scariest one above all others. And we haven't mentioned Tim Curry.
Ooh.
Obviously, none of this applies to Tim Curry. He's Teflon. He does the best you could possibly do with the material, period. There's
Kiss me, fat boy.
I want to talk about him in comparison to the new guy who I forget his name suddenly. I'm sorry, but the new Pennywise. I mean, we'll cover
Bill
that
Skarsgård.
whole movie. That's right. I knew he's a Skarsgård, but I didn't know which.
Yeah.
And he does interesting, fabulous, difficult acting things in his own way. But I think Tim Curry, honestly, like as an actor, the decisions he makes are more clever. I think he just destroys. And it can't save the movie. The movie still sucks, and Pennywise is not scary.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a gritty realism in the new ones. Like, I won't say it's a 1-to-1 akin between these two movies, but like if you look at the difference between 1990 and 2017's and you look at something like, I don't know, Batman and Jack Nicholson's Joker and like Heath Ledger's Joker, I'm not saying that
Oh, that's a good
they're
analogy.
the same,
yeah.
but it's like it's the same era, and therefore like the campiness of the character of those two characters are very similar. I think Tim Curry's not doing a gritty thing. He's not doing like an like not your grandpa's it, you know, like he's doing a very classic clownish impression, but his nuance is so fucking dialed in. You're just watching an absolute like virtuoso actor,
and he knows what he's doing. His subtextual
exactly
choices are subversive. Like there is no scrap of dialogue ever that implies this clown is a pedophile. It's completely understood by Tim Curry and Stephen King and everyone who's scared of clowns that part of the core of that fear is that in the real world, a clown is a middle-aged adult who has only achieved that they are a clown, and you trust them alone with your children. And there's a high rate of creep factor involved in that. Yeah. When you take off the makeup, it's like some 50-year-old guy named Stu. Who the fuck knows what he's going to do with your kid?
Right.
And every subtextual choice that Tim Curry brings to Pennywise makes him not only he's going to eat you, but he's kind of horny for you. Like there is a sexuality to Pennywise that I think is subversive, and he gets away with it brilliantly because there's nothing explicit. He just seems like a fucking perv, and it makes it so much creepier than Bill Skarsgård, who is just like, he just wants to eat you, like eat your flesh. It's like a giant spider that would eat you.
Yeah.
I actually found Tim Curry's choice to make him creepily fascinated by the kids way smarter. It's so awesome.
I want to talk about that now. I officially want to open up because we haven't actually made the break. I want to officially call this now the segment that we call It.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float
It's squared.
Where this is the episode we just talk about everything we had watching it on our minds. Because we're kind of out of the Skeleton Crew bit. I think your take is absolutely right. And the one thing, I almost feel like we can start with that. I have a lot to say on it as well. But there's something about the story itself and all the movies that have like come from it and are, kind of have used the clown imagery as such that we don't really talk about, or have yet to hear someone really elucidate the like symbolism behind why King chose that for the story. And I think you touched upon it.
Why a clown?
But I think it's everywhere in the story. To me, the story even, and I haven't read the book, it almost only occurred to me watching this version because it's something that I think is actually kind of lost in the new versions. And there's one great scene in this movie, I think. And I don't think the new ones have an equivalent of it. And it speaks kind of what you were saying. It's the scene in, I believe, part 2, when Bev tells the story of how Henry and his gang, Henry being the big bully guy, inexplicable bully that King always has,
Man.
Yeah, they're pretty rough.
Yeah, okay, we'll save
Let's
it, but we
save
got to
it.
talk
I wanna talk about- I
Henry
wanna-
Bowers
yeah.
as a thing.
But they assault her younger self, and she sees a man, I want to say Mr. Ross, across the street, who looks concerned and is watching on. But in the moment when he's about to, like, she was like, I thought he was going to do something, he just walks back to his house and shakes his head. So she comes to the conclusion that something, and she says this as a quote, something's terribly wrong in Derry. And she's not talking about the clown. The clown is not.
It's rotten dairy. But it is. In the book, I think it's an allusion to the fact that in the book, Pennywise uses mind control
sure.
to make Derry a place where no one helps each other.
But it's a metaphor, right? I think the recent ones lost this, and it's at the heart of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story that takes advantage of the small town America's version of itself. It's unnatural, of course, when kids go missing, when someone within the community could do something so reprehensible.
The betrayal of neighborliness.
Exactly.
It's like the perversion of it.
And so there's something terribly wrong in Derry might as well be a statement about the loss of trust in that community. So the clown as a figure, like you said, who visits your kid on your birthday, it's like this puts this tale for me in a kind of hereditary level, like it's Americana horror, you know?
That's really cool. And I got to say, that's definitely true of the book because each of the Losers Club members has a tragic backstory that is delved into in such detail and treated with, I would say, a fair amount, as much as King could muster. I could tell his heart was in the right place, of like empathy and understanding and trying to project what that situation would be. So like Mike, the only black person in the Losers Club, deals with constant small town racism, right? And that's dealt with in the book in a fairly complex way that gets at all these things you're talking about, how like Americana glosses over the people who fall through the cracks, the people we treat like shit just to keep our sense of community intact. Yeah. And of course, Bev has an abusive father who in the book is explicitly sexually abusive, and then has the cycle of so it actually deals with and she exactly, like trust, when your trust gets completely trampled upon, and different effects that has on people on a systemic level, or in Bev's case, how sometimes people who grow up in abusive situations find themselves repeating that cycle in life with their choice of partner, and they ask themselves, why? Does that mean it's my fault? No, it's very complex. It's complex psychology. And the problem with a show, and it's interesting because when I saw the new movies, I was very upset that they lost all that, because to me, like, exactly what you're hitting on is the brilliant, like, that's the heart of the story. That's the subtext that makes the story relevant. It's a surprising, scary
It's not
cavalcade.
about an alien monster. It's right here on our paved streets, like under our
it's truly a novel.
Fences.
It's not a.
That's why
pulp.
the sewer is so important, and it's
he's trying to say important things, and I just think, when I saw the new movies, I was upset that stuff was all just basically surgically removed and referenced in very clean clinical ways, almost as just plot points, don't worry about them. And I was like, that sucks, man. Like, you're just going to ignore that Mike Hanford has to deal with racism every day of his life because it's small town America. That was one of the poignant fucking things. Then you go to this version, and I'm like, I don't know which is worse, because in this version, they just boil it down to Bowers constantly calls him the N-word, but they never explore how that feels for Mike, how it affects him, what it means about America. They just, it's almost like, we get to say the N-word. He's a bad guy. He says the N-word. So it's like, man, that clumsy of a handling is worse than you should have just shut your fucking mouth about it if you don't know how to handle it. So it's interesting that this old version seems to try and allude to everything in the book almost out of a loyalty. Like Eddie says, like, well, I was a virgin. The only ones I ever loved were you. And that line is a reference to the fact that they all fucked as kids, but they don't have the balls to include that scene or have it be true. So they have all these weird So they like allude to the idea of racism in the worst way possible by just dropping the N-word with no understanding or context around it, and then killing the guy who said it. Like, it's like a bumper sticker that just says racism is bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, I did my part for the week. So yeah, that was one of my, I think you cut right to the heart of the issue. Like, the dropped ball here is they tried to turn it into a carnival thrill ride where you hand over your 5 tickets and you sit in the booth and you hear spooky sound effects and you go, that was it? Like, that was it?
Right. Yeah. There's no real tragedy. It's just the monster, though. And I think
this is not us. This is not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the realization about, like, it made me realize that there's a big difference between past and present horror tropes. Like, the efforts of past horrors put into character work versus the effort of modern horrors into, like, the visual stylings. So, like, character-based horror, or what I'm calling the past horror, we get caught up in the drama. We see their situations and how they react. I think the payoff is that we worry more about these characters during their trials to come. But in, like, the 2000s, I want to say, like, I don't want to blame, like, The Ring, but that 2002 feels like a great year for, like, this to happen. Mainstream horror became so much more about the visuals being horrifying. Well, it makes the films, like, basically look the same, and it emphasizes a bag of tricks where just the visceral sight of the monster is where the horror stems from, which is very much still true in it. I mean, the imagery of the clown is the thing, but it's not from a psychological terror. Where people and are invested in are being placed in immediate threats. And I think that that's something that I think the 90 version has it more. I don't think it's entirely successful, but I will say that this is a big difference between past and present horror tropes and what they go for.
I did like it. They did a lot more to, although they had a few in the current movie, but you're right, they go to more of an effort because they can't rely on scary special effects to come up with conceptual horror that reflects how Pennywise appears to be whatever you fear most. And of course, that's not just a clown. That's why in this old version, one time he's a werewolf, one time he's a mummy, one time he's like your father being disappointed in you. There's a conceptual element to what does it reveal about what this character fears most in life. Whereas I think now that we have the effects to legitimately make something that is scary just to look at. Like, my mind always flashes back to that meme that went viral recently of that ugly bird-faced lady. Do you remember that
No.
creepypasta image that's just like a lady's deformed face and she kind of looks like a bird? And it somehow hacks your brain. It's just a creepy looking thing. Or that's like why Slender Man can go big, right?
Yeah.
And it does it seems to lose we no longer need to get to the heart of what does
beast.
humans fear. Yeah.
It's a different beast, and I think it's because it's fascinated with beasts and lore. You know, like, we don't learn much about the Deadlights in this movie and where the clown came from in this version. We learn a little bit more in the modern versions, and I think that's because we're placing the monster front and center. I think audiences still need to know who they're following, so if we do that, we need to understand them more. But I think we're making our horror films with the object of terror not being mysterious. And so therefore we need to understand what his deal is, which is kind of counterproductive because
that's true.
Yeah.
We're living through a time of extreme lore love and world building.
Like, once again, going to the ring, we need to know, like, what's Samsar's deal? Like, how did she do this?
Yeah.
She can't just be a demon. She has to be a little girl with a story. And I think that that's fine. That's a tale. I'm not saying shame on us for going this way. I'm just saying we're definitely fascinated with it, and it's one facet of how terror is manifested on screen. That's all. It's really funny that we're having this discussion because, like, I also read a quote while I was doing research for this one, which is that Stephen King, and I guess this is actually a popular quote, but I guess maybe this just shows my ignorance. Have you ever heard this quote from Stephen King where he says, "I'm the literary equivalent of Big Mac and fries"?
I don't fully agree. He is sometimes, but I don't.
That's
I don't know. I think he's underselling himself. Yeah,
I think he's probably doing that. I just think that means that he may just be putting on a show when he says that.
Well, and it's the best-selling thing of all time, so he's complimenting
Right.
himself at the same
But
time.
it
yeah.
also speaks to his tropes. Like if we look at his tropes, like how many tropes are at play in this? Like in terms of just like character archetypes, like the writer kid, the fat kid, the weak kid who needs to be protected.
That's my other big gripe about it that I do lay at the feet of Stephen King, and it's one of his earlier novels,
Right.
like major novels. So I hope he grows out of this, and I'm wondering if we just happened by chance to meander through, because for example, we covered The Mist. The Mist doesn't rely on any of these tropes. It's all fresh,
True.
new tropes. They're still archetypal, but they're fresh. I can think of lots of Stephen King stuff that doesn't venture into this territory, but having just covered Stand By Me and Dreamcatcher, and now It, I am a little sick of how often he has a character that's a writer who basically seems like a Stephen King type, how often he has the kid that is a wisecracking comedian that is so unlike what a comedian is like literally just a miniature Jerry Lewis kid.
Yeah,
he loves
he's also
it.
He's like the comedian and the cool kid, and I don't know about you,
Yeah,
but that's not
which is
really
not
true.
how it works.
Yeah.
No. And he's already wearing he already carries around hand buzzers and wears like smoking jackets. And you're like, this kid's getting his ass kicked every day.
Yeah, for sure.
And rightly so. Fuck this kid. He just goes back to, this is so
The bully
Stand By Me kids.
characters,
Just
it's like history of violence level.
kids coming of age, he's obsessed with fat kids that just constantly get called fat. And I would say when you handle that from the chubby kid's point of view, it does become an act of body shaming empathy, and you can tangle with that in an interesting way. But there's also such a thing as just relying on the same tropes over and over,
Right.
and he just seems to do that.
Yeah.
And you brought up the biggest one of all, so let's talk about Henry Bowers.
Yeah, let's go.
A straight up ripped out of time from Newsies, hair greased back Fonzie
Got a
style
little
in class,
ponytail.
just
like,
saying
in front.
shit like, quote, "I'm a bully, I'll kill you all."
Kill you all. I'll kill
Just
you
the most-
all.
I'll kill you all. I swear vengeance as a stereotypical bully upon you. He sees Pennywise and his hair turns white. Henry Bowers is some of the stupidest shit that's ever been committed to film. This poor kid that had to play Henry Bowers. It's just the distillation. And like you said, like we rip on American history of violence as a throwback to, this is the uber Stephen King bully. And by Stephen King bully, if you're unaware, we mean a bully who has no right to exist. No empathy or understanding is
just a
spent towards trying to understand how he could
shit.
function.
Yeah.
Like it's so amazing that in a book where you're like, here's 7 kids and here are 7 bespoke backstories that each illuminate something like the terror of having your sexual identity transgressed upon, the terror of systemic entrenched racism, the terror of being born into a body that earns you shame and revile, and you didn't ask to be born that way. Like
Issues
this
with
kid-
missing fathers and abusive adults.
So like,
yeah.
oh yeah, exactly the same as Stand By Me. His brother's dead and the parents won't let him in his room.
Right.
Exactly the same as Stand By Me. And yet there's this kid who is so full of twisted hatred that he's constantly, as a child, just screaming, "I'll kill you," and means it, like taking out switchblades and trying to carve his name in people. He must have something going on at home. He must.
He must.
Like, what is Henry Bowers' childhood like? And I love that we spend no effort. We're just like, I don't know.
He's a
But
piece
that
of
kid's-
shit, dude.
That
Yeah.
kid's just a piece of
What
shit.
ends up happening is a mental institute until like Pennywise appears in the moon and he gets out. You know, like he's
That was
just
some
a
insane
device.
clown posse shit.
He's
There's a
just-
clown in the moon telling me to kill kids.
Yeah, he's just a device is what it comes down to. It's just a format.
By the way, would we have the joy that is the Insane Clown Posse without it?
I doubt
don't
it.
think so.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Juggalos everywhere should read it for sure.
Yeah, they need to know the roots, man.
Fago should have They All Float in Here on it. Oh. You know, the bubbles.
What are bubbles? What do they even mean?
They're just drink balloons, man. They're just drink balloons.
It's magic. Yeah, I think there's smart stuff that he does with, like, cause like now we're teetering on like this weird balance, and I'm glad you brought up Like
Well,
the
I
archetypes.
don't want to say Stephen King's a hack because we devoted a whole series to him.
No.
But I'm like, is Stephen King a hack?
No, I think he just has he has this like it's like poetry, it rhymes. Like he just has these tales that he wants to tell, and that's the archetypes that we're tired of. But he does understand structurally how flaws of characters manifest in the story and propel the story forward. And I'm going to give him credit for that because I think he does a really smart thing with the story of It. And seeing it in this like configuration with the time dilation is really kind of a lot better because front and center in this show, in this TV movie, is that you see like immediately he makes it clear by their vignettes as he introduces all like the cast of characters. The entire ensemble are different aspects of like overcompensation and insecurities based off their youth. Like,
Well, and they all have an it, right?
They all
That's
have
why
an
it's
it.
called it.
Yeah.
It is amorphous, and they all have amorphous things that oppress them,
And
like racism or sexual abuse in your past.
and it's so good and refreshing to see character work that is like, okay, so these people are in their own glass prisons. Let's take them somewhere where those prisons are going to break and they're going to be unleashed and have to look at themselves in the mirror, so to speak. Like Ben overcame his weight, but now he's like a drunk. Bill is a control freak and used to be like a coward. Like Bev, who was bold in her youth, has found like you mentioned she was in an abusive relationship.
She feels she can't get out of the cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's at this whim of a complete asshole who beats her and won't allow her to speak in public. And that's basically a copy paste of her father. Eddie lives with the mother.
Right. Eddie's mom has Munchausen by proxy, which means she tells him he's sick all the time when he isn't.
Yep.
And even though he's a full-grown adult, he can't shake that. He still keeps his asthma inhaler, even though he knows that his mom was delusional.
Richie uses comedy to deflect reality.
I get. It's so that's the other thing is I feel like Stephen King had some funny friend that he just wishes he was instead.
Let's dive into that.
Because Richie's still cool and funny. That's like his.
Yeah,
he's just
popular.
glides through everything.
At one point he says like, let Leno do that. So he's like Leno-esque.
Yeah. Well, they also say everyone who escaped its pull and left Derry became unusually successful. Mm-hmm. I forget if that's magic or why.
If
but
that's
they
an
do
effect of Pennywise.
Some weird effect, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I haven't seen Architects on Time magazine, but we see one in this movie because John Ritter has a Time magazine. I don't know, was that a thing that you could do? Could you just like buy a Time magazine and have your face
with
on
you
it?
on the cover?
I guess
yeah.
you can.
It was a thing in the 90s that became available. So there's actually an undercurrent of, you know how, comedians collectively enshrine shit. Like we'll all remember, there's so many TV shows that will be forgotten, but we'll all remember some random TV show because it becomes a punching bag joke or like it's a popular punchline. That thing where you get your own face as Times Man of the Year
became a punching bag.
It was a thing in the 90s, and so many comedies reference it because everyone thought it was stupid.
Stupid, and it ain't.
Who would do that?
Yeah.
Seinfeld has one. Yeah.
Not as good as the Big Lebowski joke though.
Which one?
The
Any joke
man
in
of
Big
the year,
Lebowski?
man of the year, when he looks at himself and then he goes, like he looks at when he's talking to Brant. Remember, this is not
That's
the Coen
right.
brothers, but just another Time magazine joke. The comedy stuff is, and I love that we actually see like a little bit of his sets. That's like really important to me.
It's important to me that you saw some of his jokes and could confirm, just like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
generic.
You're like, great. Writers who can write horror do not necessarly know how to write jokes.
Oh, it's
Got
so
it.
good. It's
Still
like
true.
you remember like in like Star Trek TNG when they'd have like a comedian would come in and like, let me tell you, Data, about comedy or something like that. Comedy's like this, bada bing, bada boom. And it's just like,
comedy
so
is a
wrong.
pair of chattering, wind-up
Because
teeth,
it's
and me talking about my ex-wife's mother-in-law.
Yeah, because it's
Like,
sci-fi
okay, man.
writers trying to write comedy. And it's so great. It's a treasure is what it is. I mean, I'm not telling anyone to stick to their lane. Who am I to say any of that? It's just hilarious to see. It's like wearing it's wearing a weird. It's like going out in public and wearing a weird suit and just like, I noticed that suit. That suit's weird. Like that's.
And you're like, I know that's a joke. Do you get it? And you're like, it's not a joke, just that I noticed it.
Yeah, it's less of a joke. I'm not on your level. I feel like you got to get me to your level in order to laugh at the joke.
Or that you switch two words. Like he'll be like, my heart is running and my nose is a flutter. And you're like, that's kind of a joke. You're getting there, buddy.
Yeah. You're using words. Yeah, it's not quite it, but it's hilarious.
It's interesting because I have done stand-up sets and they went fine. And like other people who I really admire saw the stand-up sets and told me they were good. So I have every reason to believe that they're good enough to have not seemed like an out of place movie stand-up set. Like I've done stand-up, people were like, yeah, that was stand-up, you did it. And yet there is something about, because I also, of course, screenwrite, it's tough to it's weird. I don't understand because it's identical.
And then joke here.
I find it way easier to be very funny in the Agents of Crack context or in the pilot we wrote just now that we referenced at the top of the show. Right, Banter is so funny to me because one character undercutting another. You have status shifts you can do.
Yeah.
You have like just two things existing makes it so much easier.
They twist around.
That's why a lot of comedy writers find stand-up to be a true challenge because it's a monologue. It's a
tip of the
monologue
spear.
is
Just
harder
keep
than
sticking with me here.
So I guess what I'm saying is I'm no shade at anyone who can't. I even who has done stand-up, I would rather write banter than stand-up than a comedic monologue. A comedic monologue, that's why Does Not Compute always took the longest. It's hard. It's really annoying.
That's fair. Yeah.
And people who are writing a movie and have a lot of other things they can turn to, like, so you didn't laugh. I'm about to make you scared. That's what you're here for anyway. They never really put the sheer amount of effort and micromanagement into their comedy writing that you need to make it feel like a real seasoned stand-up special. Because stand-ups will do the same comedic monologue. Think about this. To make your comedic monologue feel real, you should tour with that monologue as your material and hear what bombs and hear what hits and rewrite it for 6 months and then write it as screenplay in your movie.
Right.
If you wanted it to feel like real stand-up.
Right. Right.
That's what it would take.
Or get a stand-up writer to write some jokes for you.
Or get Mike Birbiglia to write. But any stand-up writer, that shit is so hard and so precious. Why wouldn't he just do it as his own material?
Yeah, because you're paying him. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, you get Patton Oswalt to ghost add jokes to Ratatouille and you're golden.
Hell yeah, baby. Yeah. Hell yeah. I got a question for you.
Hire us.
As a, because you're like kind of a structuralist like me. You're like a formalist.
Feed me those semiotics.
I got a question. What is Stan's function in this tale? And just to refresh our memory, Stan is the guy he's the Boy Scout as a young boy. He has very little that we know about him other than he's a Boy Scout. In fact, at one point he says like the Boy Scout law over and over as a mantra to not be scared.
To ward off Pennywise.
Yeah, and then when we see him later in life, we don't see him in part 2. Well, I guess we do. We see his head in a fridge. But in part 1, it's
that's
revealed
Pennywise, though. That's
he kills
not really
himself after he gets the phone call from Mike. So...
Mike.
So, what's his function in the story?
My thought...
Can he be cut out?
I haven't read the book in probably 15 years, so I just remembered things that really stuck in my mind, and I was able to bring some of those to bear, but I can't say that like, oh yeah, this is Stan's deal in the book. But, so judging solely on the movie and like gut checking what I think probably the book was, based on my vague memories, is I got the impression that he represented how he's the very surface layer of that Gilded Age of Americana you were talking about. So like,
I think you're right.
Mark Twain coined the phrase the Gilded Age, and gilding is when a book that has gold edges. And the reason Mark Twain called the era he was living through the Gilded Age, frankly, was because of things like slavery, where he was saying, we are all about, like, we have steam power now. We have the cotton gin. There was a lot of self-patting on the back by white Americans when Mark Twain was alive about, if you can believe it, because of course time makes fools of us all, but like, we live in the future now. Technology is like, oh my God, technology's blowing up in a big way. Factory automation is going to change everything. We are golden. We are golden gods. We control nature. You know, we were getting that sense that we mastered the earth. We rule. And he was like, but it's gilded. The outside is gold and the inside is, we're all, you know, fucking our own kids and having slaves and murdering each other in alleyways. Like, that was one of Mark Twain's big sticking points. And I think Stan appeals to that same.
I think you're right.
He's the guild. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. He repeats the words that you're supposed to say. He stands and salutes and wears the uniform and does the Pledge of Allegiance. And when a killer clown, despite everything he was taught to be true, starts bending reality in front of him, what does he rely on? The Boy Scout motto. Well, you know what? When the shit with capital IT really hits the fan, what does he do? Fucking kill himself in a bathtub like a coward, leaving everyone who loves him traumatized just because he's scared. And I think it represents the frailty of those mottos, of the fact of like, oh, I'm in the army. We have veteran fans who have reached out. Christian Ramirez is a veteran, and like, no shade to, I think being in the army can do a lot of things for a person's life and strengthen a lot of characteristics. But it also isn't just, I was in the army, you can assume I'm smart and capable and stalwart and manly and all whatever we associate with that. Being in the Boy Scouts doesn't make you a good guy. The Boy Scouts enshrine a certain set of morals, and obviously evil people can go through the Boy Scouts and wreak havoc, or you can take something from the Boy Scouts that's a great experience that teaches you to be a better person in life. It's like how you use it. And Stan had all the tools, but didn't know how to use them. He was sort of a coward at the end of the day. I hope when faced with a killer clown, I wouldn't just kill myself to get out of the situation, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm an Eagle Scout, right?
I do, right? Yeah. So I was like,
no, I'd say you're spot on. We're a bunch of cowards.
But you know what I mean. The words you're saying.
His home life is portrayed as the most comfortable, healthy. His wife loves him. Man. They're like, they flirt a little bit before he takes the phone call, and they're just like, you, and it's just like, it's the picture of Americana, like, healthiness, and then off screen, he offs himself. You remember
immediately they get a call and he's like, it is back. And he's like, I see.
The poem Richard Cory, right?
I mean, we must have. Great Simon and Garfunkel song, too.
Right, yeah. That's how I think I was most popular. He's Richard Cory, right?
I think about that song constantly when I'm beating up on myself about how we aren't making movies like we want to be. Mm-hmm.
That's dark.
Richard Cory's one of the only things that makes me feel, I'm like, but it wouldn't guarantee I would be happy. Richard Cory.
Yeah.
Remember Richard Cory.
Richard Cory. Yeah.
It's a dark thing, but it's true. It's like, if there's something you aspire to that's a real long shot lottery ticket childhood dream, you can't go thinking that when you're unhappy, oh, but if I got that thing, I would be happy. There's no guarantee that's true. It's just a good reminder.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just a good reminder. Yeah.
But what were you going to say about Richard Cory?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I was just drawing it as a parallel, and people should go read that poem.
Great poem.
It's a great poem, and it kind of speaks on, I think, what Stan's function is here. And I think you nailed it, I think he's functionally serves a purpose, and yes, he's cut. The reason I asked the original question is he cuttable? Is he, formally, does he add?
I think he proved that he is, my friend.
We like to have fun here. It's more like he is the one outside of the rest of them, who is a cautionary tale of there is no other way out. The only way out is in. The
only way out is to fight it. Or kill yourself.
Because
and who wants that? Right.
They didn't finish, and that's why they're all. I think to me, that's what's the power of the story. Again, with the flaws of the character stuff, talking about how each of them have flaws as a kid, and they also have flaws as an adult, and it's just like dressed up in different clothes. And some of them aren't even their flaws, you know, in like the case of Bev, she's just become less emboldened over time, but it's because she's been a victim her whole life. But ultimately, all these vignettes that kind of introduce them, and then they kind of like make a stand together and like overcome that. It's showing that like structurally, they are all essentially through lines that we show one-on-one relationships. Like, I think what I'm getting to is the one-on-one relationship focus of this movie versus the ensemble cast of like the new movies, and kind of how I thought what it was.
Yeah, they do a little more mapping of their
like look at the Bill Mike scene in the hospital after he's stabbed by Henry, Mike is, and there's an emphasis on this like one-to-one relationship of just these two guys and their personal relationship. It's not just convene the team and together they will overcome. It's like, no, let's strengthen the bonds individually, and then when they're together as a team, we've shown the apparatus as being a sum of parts, you know? And I think...
Although structurally, do you find it an editorial problem that for an hour and a half, you are continually returning to the home base of Michael is calling someone to assemble the team? It makes the entire first half of the movie feel like an opening montage. It had like a Suicide Squad effect on me.
Part one is...
Where it's like, I know other scenes have been shimmied in, but we're still not done calling people. Mm-hmm. It's so much calling people.
Yep. And that actually has, speaking about structure, I actually took as I'm wont to do, I took a stopwatch to this one because I want to know how TV does like Pennywise beats. So I timed exactly when all of the beats happened where like there's a scene, and then there's Pennywise appears and something scary happens. And in 180 minutes, which is like basically its runtime, there's like 21 beats with Pennywise. And that includes 2 sequences, one in the middle and one at the end, that themselves are about 10 minutes long, because that's like the finales, right? And when you look at the stopwatch and you look at what's going on in those scenes that I'm marking, it's very, like, that's actually a pretty good efficiency. It's like more or less one every 10 minutes, which is on par with sequencing for traditional movies. So if we see this as 2 movies, it's about on par with what you get with watching 2 movies in number of scares, I guess. But if you notice in the second half, it's so many more like small bits that are like rehashes of old bits, that it's like clear that part 1 has all the scary stuff and part 2 has just with the exception of some things like the Chinese restaurant with like the
cookie monsters, literal cookie monsters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's some new stuff, but like we're talking like an hour 35 in, hour 40 in, hour 45. These beats are just like Ben returns to the pond and sees literally the same thing he saw as a boy, you know, or
right,
you know, he appears to Richie in a library and pops blood balloons on people, but no one's in danger. It's not like a actual horror scene. It's just like, remember, Pennywise is here and he pops blood balloons, and it's like, okay, that's not that scary, you know. It's different from like Pennywise preying on Georgie in the street, which is like one of the most iconic moments, like scenes in this story. It might be in cinema, you know, like it's awesome because Tim Curry is awesome. But like when you look at the beats themselves, they're very kind of laid back, like not really, they don't really have claws.
Yeah. Just Tim Curry appreciation. The joy he seems to exude when he says they float. Like, these sound like I would go with him. These sound like the best balloons that I've ever encountered. Yeah. Oh, they float. They all float. Like, it sounds like these balloons are going to give me a blowjob and a steak. This sounds amazing.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. there's a lot of really. I actually thought there's a lot of real bad scripting too, though. Like to get off the formal train.
Oh, the exposition is ridiculous over this. They meet at the Chinese restaurant and they go, "It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in 20 years. As you know, Henry Bowers confessed to murdering the children and is now incarcerated in the mental asylum." And that's only a slight exaggeration of what actually goes down. Yeah.
Right. But also, like, stuff that, like, King, I'm sure, didn't make the mistake in the novel.
There's
like,
no,
for example,
the lines are not that in the book. Yeah.
For example, they just determine as children that silver will kill it. It's a total assumption made by the kids. I'm sure in the book someone's going to be, well, actually, and they're
it's
right.
that Pennywise, because Pennywise is attached to your mindscape, collectively you can push back against it. That's why their belief that the asthma inhaler is battery acid works. So it's, you know, it's a constant
belief.
mental battle.
Yeah, it's
so
just
it's
belief.
like
Yeah,
if the
that's
kids
true.
believe silver will kill it, then silver will damage it because it's a fear creature. So you've convinced it to be afraid.
This is what I want to talk about.
And this is all in the book, yeah.
But this is what I want to talk about because you hit on something very key. Is about the power of the group in the It tale and the ramifications of defeating the monster It. Because like you said, in the end, silver works because they believe it. And in fact, I forget who it is. I think it's Eddie says, "I believe in Santa Claus, but I don't believe in you. This is battery acid." So in Stephen King's It, what does it mean to not believe in monsters? I think it means two things. One, they don't exist, which let's think about the symbolic nature of what we talked about earlier. Or two, we are as powerful as monsters. They have no power over us, so we can rip their spider bodies like asunder, and it's fine. And in
Not
a tale,
fine. It's a constant struggle, but I think it is that one. It's that the only monsters are us. We make racism and trauma and shame and hate. Therefore, we are the masters of reality. We could also, through our collective will, not be assholes, and life would be more pleasant. I really think it's as simple as that.
Right, but it's kind of weird that the defeat of It, the monster, is contingent on not believing in it. So ignoring a threat deflates its power. That's weird.
Oh, but you're saying like ignoring systemic racism we've seen is not the way to address systemic racism or any
So I just
systemic
like the metaphor
problem.
built here because of the ramifications of that through line.
But you see how it works as like in AA we call it pulling a geographic, where it's like it totally makes sense if you're thinking of it as whatever that thing is in your life that because of the way you are in life or the slot you were slotted into oppresses you or fills you with fear and terror or threatens to destroy you. It makes so much sense. It's like they all tried to pull a geographic, and even though they became unusually successful far from home, the shadow of your childhood trauma and the shit that was truly fucked up about the way your mind was formed when it was forming, that will never be resolved. It will always be a shadow cast over you unless you return home metaphorically and confront it, whatever it is. You have to come to some kind of understanding with systemic racism if you're Mike, or the trauma you suffered if you're Bev, or your stutter if you're Bill, which seems like the lowest stakes one.
Lowest stakes.
But you know what I mean?
Man.
You have to come,
Yeah.
you have to address the childhood shit, which is why so many people in middle age find therapy, address their shit, and come out better for it. It's a process that is positive and you have to go through. And I just feel like them coming together as the Losers Club and using their lack of fear and their willpower to defeat whatever it is that is the horrible thing represents the fact that we as a community of humans have the ability to improve our conditions. But you're absolutely right that it becomes muddied. See, this is the kind of argument we would have about a screenplay we were writing, where you'd be like, we can't do the clown, dude. And I'd be like, why? And you'd be like, because think about it mathematically, that would mean you should ignore systemic racism to defeat it. And I'd be like, fuck. Yeah, we can't do the clown.
Can't do the clown, dude. It's one of the, I understand like
I get what he's going for, but your point is valid.
Desirable remainder of the addition machine. That is the crafting of a narrative.
Well,
it's
when you say stuff,
oh yeah, that's true.
When you say stuff with symbols, you can't not accidentally say other stuff because they're symbols.
Because people are going to extrapolate the symbols as they are, and you don't want to stand behind a statement that you don't want. Like, people are going to extrapolate what they want, but you want clearly a symbolic like through line in your stories, and you want those people to be following you a little bit. Like, okay, so then what does that mean? What does that mean? So what's the question here? You know, that's the kind of hope, is that's what we're doing with our stories. So when people say, so just ignore the monsters, and it's just like, fuck that, I am sane technically, and I don't want that there, so tear it all down. Or
release it anyway and become the best-selling author of all time.
Hey,
sometimes I think we are too nitpicky with our own micromanagement of what symbols mean.
There's a few things I like, just continuing the train. I do want to tear down from this movie, though.
Sure.
What's with we talked about archetypes a little bit. What's with King's? It's becoming more clear to me now. Like, he does the insert thing. He has like a self-insert addiction. Like, he puts the writer in, and he places like himself in as a character all the time, it seems. Bill gets
in
the
the Dark
most
Tower,
emphasis.
literally, I think in the Dark Tower, he finally got to the point of confidence where he's like, fuck it, I'm Vonneguting this. I can do this. I'm going to put myself in as myself. It's happening.
Bill gets the most emphasis, just like on our other things like Dreamcatcher and Stand By Me, of course, which are like symbolically aligned with this because they deal with the same archetypes and tropes. Bill gets the most emphasis or his archetype gets the most emphasis in these stories, in both of his backstory, in this case, in the past with Georgie's arc, and the present, because inexplicably there's like the Greco storyline that I was like, what is this? Because
you mean literally the last shot of the movie is like the wrap up of an arc that we barely care about?
Right, and Greco is just this weird threat from afar that's flirting with his girlfriend Audra, and so it's like, this is clearly like King inserting like I left a successful businessman home with my wife, and I have fears about that, and here it is in the story. Like, he does the same, like, on top of everything else we've kind of mentioned it, but like, just the idea of Bev fucking all of them, and like, it becomes super awkward because even though the director cut it out, there's still like multiple kisses.
King has his own weirdness and blind spots.
It's like, what?
It's not all at the feet of the screenwriters. The book, it has problematic portions. But as I always underscore, because we do kind of live in a cancel culture, and I'm pro it most of the time. Most of the stuff I see getting canceled deserved it. But everyone has problematic stuff inside of them. That's part of the, and not writing a novel is an act of being, if you write a certain types of novels, is a very intimate act of revealing yourself as much as you can. So, of course, there's weird shit in there too that you have to place at the feet of Stephen King. He's on his journey, and he says weird stuff about, you can question, maybe he's working out his own shit about his relationship to women or sex through this, and I would buy that. And I'm sure if someone who's not me, because you can never see it yourself, could read my shit and point out something that's like, you have a problem with this that you haven't resolved, and you can tell because of this character and this character, and they're probably right. It's easier to observe that stuff about other people than yourself, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, I don't want to put him under a fire too much. I mean, not that he doesn't need to for some of these decisions.
We would cancel Stephen King if we felt we needed to.
Right.
I think he's good. So far, so good.
So far, so good. I mean, I don't understand. I haven't read a lot of the books, and obviously, like, all of the 7 losers literally having underage sex with Bev is like, that's not so good. But I guess it's not a but that's like that, but there's other stuff that matters more. I guess it's just a matter of like, this main character getting the girl is on display here. It's another weird sexual like fantasy The sexual nature of the gang is definitely something I want to point to, but just talking about King's kind of insert of the writer character, like, why is Bill the main character? That's weird. It feels
but
weird.
You know why?
It feels like
right. It's because King has a
Mike
good
should be
grasp
the main
on that character. King has a good grasp on that character because it's him. It's easier to write.
And there is this good sequence where Bill stands up for himself.
Well, and the book is much more an ensemble. You're in the head of whichever member of the Losers Club you're writing with at the time. I think the movie makes Bill feel even more protaggy than the book does.
That's probably true. I just think that, I don't know why Mike isn't. He's the guy who's like assembling the crew. And the movie literally starts with him as the first member. And it's just like, why isn't it his story? But yeah, Bill does have there's a good bit that I thought, the help me bit, if you don't remember. Like, he stands up for himself and confides that he's been afraid. Like, he's telling the other Losers Club members, he confides that he's been afraid his whole life. And it cuts back to him pleading in the woods when he's talking.
Help me kill it.
Help me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's as good as it gets with the montage dilation in this movie, where it's like, oh, that's a resonant scene. They're emotionally in the same place. So cutting to that past right now is justified, as opposed to normally where the sequences are just like, well, here's exposition you need to know that Eddie's like this and has these problems, so that when we cut to him later, he's still having those problems, and you're like, God, kid, grow up. But yeah, the Bill stuff is really distracting. I find it the most distracting in the movie, and by extension the Bev stuff. Those are really rough. I do like the Bev character because of the thing that we talked about earlier.
Although she ends up with Ben, not Bill.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Which is fine. Yeah. I mean, she should get out of her abusive relationship. That's for sure.
And
and Ben has always been a support system. So
well,
it
his
seems
is so
healthy.
simple. Was a chubby kid and now he gets a girl. So I guess good.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's fine. Yeah. Everything's fine. In Hollywood, everything's fine. But yeah, it's one of those things.
Henry Bowers didn't get any happy ending or any processing of whatever trauma he's carrying around.
Dude, he's just a piece of shit. That's all.
But that's what I'm saying is the biggest pieces of shit. You can easily turn the story on a dime and be like, why is he a piece of shit? And it's interesting usually. But no, he just stays a piece of shit and he dies a piece of shit.
The other thing, okay, so this is jumping topics and I know we're running a little long, but I just want to get out because if you haven't noticed this, I'm sure I'm the last one to this party, but how much water comes up in it is like, it took me this movie to understand it because once again, I think the new movies kind of just gloss over it. There's so many... literally everything points to water. It's crazy.
What do you think that means? I didn't even notice that.
Well, okay, so Bill writes about watery monsters in the first bit with him writing his story.
Man, everything points to Stand By Me. You got the scene with the kid telling the story and the other kid saying, you're going to grow up to be a writer. It ends with someone typing a journal with monologues about what happened to everyone. All right, go on. Water.
Georgie's death is during a storm. We all float.
True.
There you go. One of the attacks takes place in the showers. There's a suicide in a bathtub. The sink is overflowing with blood. When the kids first meet the first time, what are they doing? Building a dam.
So is it like pipes and because it is based in the sewers? Do you think they were trying to do a pipes and drains motif?
I think so. I think and even when we look at more like the sewer is his home and all that obviousness. The pond that is the sewer access has Ben's father and the skeleton.
Well, that's great if it's pipes and drains because that's the unseen system that holds society together where we put all our horrible shit.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's why I think the sewers of the suburb is like the perfect metaphor for it. It's, in other words, the underbelly of suburbs, the underbelly of Americana, the thing that we don't want to admit is true. All the dead kids are found in river outlets. At one point, there's literally a line by the old possessed man, like he's possessed by it, and he says, H2O, it's only water, when he's talking about when Eddie arrives, talking about how it's just a placebo, and the medicine is just water. It just has a little bit of taste to make it seem like medicine. So in other words, your sickness literally isn't real, and all it takes is a little bit of water, and you're gonna get over that. Like, it's just so. I think there's something to do with about like water is rebirth, but also water is death, because like we can't live in it. There's just so much about water that comes up with it, because it's not like when you think of clowns, you're like water, you know,
no,
a watery clown.
But it makes so much sense as drainage is an underused symbol. Drainage being like, that's how we take the stuff we don't want and we take it away. What do you think is down there? What do you think is accumulating in that U-pipe? Drainage is a great analogy.
What's the cholesterol? And I think that's what Pennywise is like the scum that survives from our, systems that we build to be perfect.
That are hateful.
Like
that have
ways in which to raise children and have a nuclear family that's healthy, which is not present in this movie. It's just not. And I don't know. When I saw that, I was like, oh, why is there so much water imagery? And why are people talking about water all the time? And so I may be late to the game, like I said, and people may have of course, read the book.
I haven't heard that take. That's great. I mean, I have heard that take about the book, but not about... I've heard the take that he lives in the sewers because that's where we flush the worst parts of ourselves. But I never have heard it tied to dude,
system.
That's why the blood comes out the sink. That's why the showers get long. That's why...
Yeah. I love the imagery of your main characters who are eventually going to beat the water monster to build a dam. That's such a cool scene now to me.
Yeah, that is cool.
What is the thing that they're trying to do? And I love how they go about building the dam too, because Seth Green at one point is like, hey, do you even know how to build a dam? He's like, no. He's like, but you think it's going to work? He's like, it's going to work. And then they all go, all right, we're building a dam. It's
they
just
believe it.
Pure belief does the dam, and
it's
it also
a little
defeats the
diorama
monster.
foreshadowing what they're going to do.
Exactly, and that's good writing, actually. So, in my opinion, you know what's not great writing is that bike riding montage.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! You mean the final moment?
Shit. The final moment where it freeze frames, but it's just over a Temptations song. God, it's just so cringy. Two grown men having fun like kids on a bike.
Yeah, or
so bizarre.
Well, it just feels like the bike magically made her come out of a coma, and I don't understand anything about why. Why would that do that?
She's like, let's just have a good little ride on this bike. It's just so stupid.
It's second only to, I gotta say, and it's a quoted scene often. Well, it's big in my mind because of the Simpsons parody of it, but Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, cut that fucking bike ride scene. What the fuck is that bike riding scene? This is second only to that as useless bike riding scenes, I would say, in movies.
It's so good.
I want to keep a running tally.
So good. Keep a running tally.
I don't need to see anyone riding their fucking bike except E.T., goddammit.
Yeah, E.T.'s the only bike that we'll accept anymore.
Where it's load bearing. The plot hinged on it, yeah. Man, do you know... before we got out of the episode, I wanted to definitely recommend a book by an author who I found out recently is a terrible guy.
Yeah,
not
a lot of them.
full on not crimes that I know of, but I just mean like Orson Scott Card, like he's a bastard.
Like he has beliefs that are bullshit.
Yeah, but like Dan Simmons, who wrote the Hyperion books, which are excellent, also wrote what is essentially a Stephen King ripoff that is very similar to it in almost every regard, but just as good, I would say. It's a really fucking good book called Summer of Night, and I recommend people read Summer of Night. You will have flashbacks to it. It feels like a sound alike to it.
Do you ever watch Fast of Night?
Yes, I did.
Okay, we got to talk about that at some point.
Okay, yeah, we could do an ep on it if you want, or maybe when I'm visiting, we can just chat about it because I'm interested to hear. You never recommend movies.
Yeah, I don't.
To me, not new movies. Like watch this new movie that just came out. So I'm curious. But not now. We should get to our final segment, which is the list or something.
The Stand.
Time to make your stand.
This is where we do a short review of Execution. and we're exist in our personal two brains as the kings in the king pantheon. We're starting to build a system of how we do this. We just kind of name them simultaneous. Is that how we're doing it?
Yes, and I am just loading up the list. I realize I should literally start a list on a notepad, which I don't have yet.
Oh, I got a notepad, baby.
Oh, well, mine's identical to yours so far.
Since we last did it, which was Stand By Me, we were identical, so there's just, as every episode, I guess, one new addition, but so far we're 5 for 5 on our agreement. I think this is going to be the one that does it.
You think we'll disagree?
I think we'll probably have a small change, subtle difference.
Okay.
If I was to bet.
This is episode 6, correct?
This is episode 6.
So of all the Stephen King things we've covered so far, my least favorite, number 6.
Oh, are we starting from bottom and going to the top?
Yeah.
I think, okay.
You think it's more dramatic the other way?
I think just for this episode, it's more dramatic the other way.
Okay, so number 1.
We know that it's not going to be the top 3, definitely.
Number 1, The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining. Still the best.
Number 2, Misery.
Stand By Me.
I'm sorry, Stand By Me. You're right, you're right. I didn't read the list properly.
Third. Yeah, okay. Number 3, Misery.
Number 3, Misery.
Number 4, Mist.
The Mist. Number 5, It.
Oh,
we agree. We agree.
All right. Never mind then.
I'll tell you what swapped it for me at the last. So number 6, Dreamcatcher.
Wah.
What swapped it for me was this conversation. My gut reaction to how I experienced the movie was that it was boring and it sucked and I hated it. But now that we've discussed it and lined up side by side, the work that they did, what did line up and was competent, I think Dreamcatcher is the more broken movie made by people who more deeply misunderstand storytelling.
Right, which is crazy because that was like Kasdan and like amazing people.
But Dreamcatcher is like a drunken guy in a bar trying to ramble through a story and he just can't quite connect the dots.
Right, I think, and Dreamcatcher has better acting as a whole, though Tim Curry puts everyone in the dust. And obviously more horrifying images because it was made more recently, so like the monsters are a little bit better. But it's
it's a more sound base.
I just think,
it just is a little more sound.
The symbolism of the threat hidden in plain sight and an Americana horror thing is what does it to me, because personally I think, and I think I'm speaking for both of us because we placed it the same, just it's such a nice trope to be like, oh, the horror isn't a monster. The horror is inside the system. And that's just a great trick. So Dreamcatcher doesn't even try any of that shit.
Dreamcatcher is so unimportant. It has nothing to say.
It's just like, in it, there is an attempt.
I agree.
Dreamcatcher
is
just, fear. Just like, look at this. Imagine being in a bathroom with some worms. And you're like, oh shit, it sucks.
I gotta sit on this toilet, but I gotta grab that cigarette. Do you have to?
Do you have to? I guess, yeah. I mean,
toothpick, whatever.
Toothpick, whatever. Whatever.
I'm glad we're still in sync, though. That's great.
I'm glad we're still in sync. 6 for 6.
Yeah.
All right. One day it's gonna happen, and then I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna be like, maybe we're losing. Maybe we've gotten out of touch.
Any idea what we want to cover next?
I don't know.
Let's talk it through a little and see if we land on something.
Okay.
I was thinking Langoliers, maybe.
Langoliers, yeah, we could do Langoliers.
Or should we do something we know is good now to get a palate cleanser?
I definitely want to stay away from some of the ones
like heaviest hitters.
Yeah, like let's not do
Shawshank
just yet. But I don't want to do the shitty ones until like I feel like we mind it. Like we could do maybe a Carrie. We could do let's do a more recent one maybe.
I've never seen Pet Sematary. I've never seen Creepshow, although I was a big fan of the comic.
I could do 1922 or like Dr. Sleep or let's take a break on Pet Sematary also works.
The Dark Tower, no. Gerald's Game was pretty good, the recent one.
Oh, I can't wait till when we do Apt Pupil.
I've never seen it.
There's so many The lawnmower man. I could fuck with the lawnmower.
I didn't
man.
know they made No Smoking into a movie. I love that's based on the short
also
story
haven't
Quitters
seen
Inc.,
that.
which is one of my favorites by him. You want to see No Smoking by Anurag Kashyap?
Sure. We're gonna do them.
Oh, this would be a really interesting pick for this show, actually. It is an adaptation of a Stephen King work, but it's an Indian movie. Like, it's not one that we would normally be on our radar, you know?
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
All right, let's do this.
Next episode.
Next episode,
month.
we're going to do 2007's No Smoking by Anurag Kashyap, co-produced by Vishal Bard. I'll learn how to say his name by the time.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
This is off the cuff. We usually don't do this. It's usually done by like text messages. So I'm glad we figured it out.
I'm trying to find ways to keep this, and of course, this is I feels like a legacy show to Cohen Brothers. I just like keeping them different than frame rate, however possible. And saying what we'll talk about next week is a way to do that.
Hell yeah.
Okay, good. It doesn't look like it's like a Razzie. I was just double checking that it's like not going to waste everyone's time. But no, it won a number of awards.
Well, I want to jump into new, fresh opportunities, new experiences, man.
It was considered much ahead of its time, courtesy of its dark and unusual storyline comprising elements of surrealism, fantasy, dream reality, horror, and dark humor, which left critics baffled.
Yeah.
It was frowned on by Indian audiences. Great. I'm
go to
interested.
Bollywood,
Very
baby.
excited. Okay. So join us next time for the No Smoking episode. We do love you. I promise to stream more in September. And I hope you'll join us and chat back. I miss talking to the beans.
Good job on your new show, by the way.
Which one?
The science show. Science or whatever.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have an excuse to talk to Griffin.
Oh, God, he's the best.
Next episode of that will be him explaining why the sun should not physically exist.
Shouldn't exist, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's going to backpedal on that one a little bit.
I think he's going to convert me to Christianity.
I think
that's the
so.
goal.
I think you're going to be born again after talking with Griffin. What a delight. What a delight. Thanks for doing this. This is a good episode. I enjoyed
this was a very good one.
All this shit out.
It turns out, we were scared for nothing. Unpacking bad ones is just as fruitful as unpacking good ones, which is a relief.
Yeah.
I don't usually do
things
that.
to say.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, I guess,
Aw,
right?
I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.